Hello and thank you for joining us on France 24. It's time for us to cast our collective eye on Africa. First up, the headlines. Human Rights Watch warns the civilians living in eastern Congolese city of Uvira risk abuse from local militia groups. This 1 week after the Congolese army and its militia allies retook the city from M23 rebels. Kinshasa denies the claims. Mozambique's authorities say at least 13 people have been killed over the last 2 weeks due to devastating floods submerging the south of the continent. They say the number is expected to rise when the waters recede and more bodies are discovered. And for the first time in 2 years, Sudan's El-Fasher football club has been able to return to the pitch and its first official competition after being displaced from their homes by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Welcome to the program. Human rights organization Human Rights Watch is warning that civilians living in the city of Uvira in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo are at risk of abuse from militia groups that have taken over the city. The report comes 1 week following the retaking of Uvira by the Congolese army and allied local Wazalendo groups from the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels. The Congolese government has rejected these claims of abuse. Emmett Livingston has more.
There was looting and violence last week when M23 rebels withdrew from Uvira, even as Congolese forces and pro-government militias moved in to take back control of the city. This sparked worries for the safety of civilians in Uvira, and particularly for the safety of the Banyamulenge, a Congolese Tutsi community. Congolese Tutsis are often typecast as supporting the M23 rebellion, and in turn, the M23 often uses prejudice against the group to justify its actions. According to a report released this week by Human Rights Watch, numerous people were wounded in the violence, and homes, shops and churches were targeted, including those of Congolese Tutsis. Militia groups allied to the Congolese government also tried to prevent civilians from fleeing Uvira. Late on Thursday, the Congolese government rejected responsibility and said that the chaos had been planned ahead of time by the rebels and their backers, Rwanda. It also denounced what it called forced displacement of civilians, including of Congolese Tutsi. Since the events of last week, the situation has grown calmer. Provincial authorities returned to the city on Friday after over a month of absence.
The United Nations World Food Programme warned on Thursday that in just a few weeks, over 1 million people in northeastern Nigeria risk losing access to emergency food and nutrition aid unless funding is secured. This comes as the agency announced it will have to scale back operations, limiting help to only 72,000 people in February, compared to 1.3 million people this time last year. Let's take a listen.
Nearly 35 million people may face food insecurity in the upcoming lean season in Nigeria. More than 3 million children at risk of life-threatening, severe and acute malnutrition. These are statistics, but behind the numbers, these represent life, and these represent also the future of Nigeria.
Uganda's military chief has sparked alarm following a series of social media posts where he announced authorities had killed 30 opposition supporters, whom he called terrorists, detained 2,000 others, and were hunting for more. The posts follow the presidential election, which declared sitting President Yoweri Museveni the victor for a 7th term, and a crackdown on the country's opposition parties. Amnesty International has condemned the remarks, saying it reflected a wider pattern of abuses after the vote.
We are concerned that the tweets by the General Muhoozi is an admission of, extrajudicial killings of people who are not subjected to, the due process, the due legal process. They were never given a fair trial before they were executed. The last I checked, he said, he tweeted that at least 30 NUP, National Unity Platform Party supporters had been killed, and he was looking for more. At the moment, after the elections, when we see many people have now become so fearful, and for the threat to come from the Chief of Defense Forces, it's a much bigger concern. Remember, this followed the internet shutdown around the election time, and the suspension of many NGOs that would otherwise be fighting for the freedoms of ordinary Ugandans. So it's a continuation of a pattern of, just human rights violations.
Flooding continues to devastate Mozambique, with authorities reporting 13 deaths over the last 2 weeks. However, they expect the death toll to climb once the waters start receding and more bodies are found. Meanwhile, the rising waters left schools, homes, roads and businesses submerged. According to the United Nations, more than 500,000 people have been affected. Emily Boyle has the latest.
Holding hands and carrying their belongings above their heads, these Mozambicans are being evacuated by South African helicopters.
The road leading from the capital city, Maputo, is cut due to flooding. There have been about 800 kilometers of roads that have been damaged or destroyed. And floodwaters are preventing or making it very difficult to reach some of these communities. We're working to use boats. Helicopters have been deployed to distribute supplies.
More than 620,000 people have been affected by flooding in Mozambique after weeks of relentless rain. The rising water has turned lives and livelihoods upside down, sharply increasing the risk of disease and malnutrition, while also forcing dangerous wildlife, including crocodiles, into flooded urban areas. Here in Maputo, this local businessman is struggling to make ends meet, as the water has flooded both his shop and his home.
We must continue with the business, because this is my sustenance. I'm a retired person for 3 years now, so this just has to continue. But we will have difficulty because from this past week, we started taking money from our savings.
The flooding is not limited to Mozambique. Large parts of neighbouring South Africa, Zimbabwe and Botswana are also affected. Several deaths have been reported by local authorities, although the death toll is likely to rise significantly.
And the rains and floods tearing through the south of the continent have increased the risks of waterborne diseases. Over the last 3 days, the Malawi health authorities rolled out thousands of cholera vaccines in a bid to stem the threat of the deadly disease. However, Malawi's healthcare services have been stretched to their limits. The sector has long been reliant on foreign aid and has reached the point of collapse a year after Washington axed its international funding. Luke Schrago reports.
Women line up for care at a clinic in Lilongwe. The Family Planning Association of Malawi has long been a cornerstone for rural care in the East African nation and is often the only medical link for remote areas. But when the United States axed its foreign aid programs a year ago, such services were pared back to the bone, and the NGO struggled to stay on top of health needs.
I know of nearly 25 girls in my village who got pregnant when FPAM suspended its services here last year. Now that they have resumed services, I am sure that cases of early pregnancies will drop, because FPAM provides contraceptives and condoms to young people to ensure that they continue with their education.
It's not just family planning issues either. Beyond an explosion in unplanned pregnancies, more than 1 million of Malawi's 22 million people live with HIV, and the US previously provided 60% of its budget for treating the virus. Cuts were made on such short notice that healthcare providers had nowhere else to turn to make up the shortfall, and thousands of patients facing discrimination where they sought alternatives simply dropped off the medical grid. Facing a loss of a decade's worth of gains in healthcare, associations have appealed not just to the government, but to potential new donors too.
When it comes to budgeting, to consider looking at what gaps have been left by the USAID, the withdrawal of USAID funding, so that that person in the rural area does not get affected, because we know we are likely to lose out on all the successes that we have registered over the years.
Researchers have estimated that globally, cuts to US aid have led to hundreds of thousands of deaths across the world's poorest regions that could have been prevented.
And good news for Sudan's El-Fasher Football Club. After being displaced from their hometown by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the team has returned to the pitch in al-Obeid and entered its first official competition in over 2 years. Laurent Bertécher has the story.
Brimming with anticipation, players of El-Fasher Football Club couldn't hold back their smiles as they stepped off the team bus and back onto the pitch. Many were forced to flee their hometown after it was captured by the RSF last year, a traumatic experience through which their club hopes to guide them by providing psychological support.
A psychiatrist is present with us in the team's camp, and the technical staff is working on preparing the players psychologically and mentally, so we can channel their sadness and despair into something positive.
The team, which hasn't played a competitive game since the war erupted in 2023, recently began training in the Al-Obeid Stadium in North Kordofan, a city that's still under the army's control and where even rival fans are helping them feel at home.
There is sympathy for these players to the point that Al-Obeid fans are cheering for them as much as for their own team.
An outpouring of love and support, which the players are hoping to repay through their efforts on the pitch.
We want to tell the loyal fans of El-Fasher that we will try to at least bring some joy to the people of the state and the club's supporters. We will try to instill hope in the midst of conflict.
Over 100,000 people have fled El-Fasher since the RSF laid siege to the city. Now scattered across Sudan, many will be cheering their team on from afar.
That's all from us for the moment. Stay tuned to France 24. We'll be right back with more news.